On this Connect to the Capitol Extra, the South Carolina State House is in that lull in between the two halves of session. We've got about 12 more weeks until the legislature makes its way back to the State House to take on the other issues that were left after the first half of session came to sine die back in May. A lot of things that are on the table right now, not the least of which are issues that have to deal with liquor liability legislation and the other subsequent issues that were not dealt with in the first half of the session, and so much more. But joining us for this extra, House District 89 Representative Micah Caskey from the great area of Springdale.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
The Tri-City area of Casey, West Columbia, Springdale. Oh, it's always Zesto that we can always meet at.
Yeah, Zesto is, I've yet to find somebody who's not a fan of Zesto.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
We could probably start with some chicken next time, but we'll do that one later. When we think back through what you saw in 2025,
yeah,
a lot of things got accomplished. A lot of things made their way across. Some things didn't make it across, but you've still got this entire second half of session that's coming up right now. What did you see that were the big successes in the first half?
Just to kind of run down the list, and I know we talked about some of these earlier. Income tax out of the House, number one. We've lowered South Carolina's income tax rate even further, and the House has passed legislation to bring us to a target of zero. It's conditioned on some performances, but I think it's the responsible way to get there, and we can talk more about why I say it requires responsibility. Some folks just say slash it, but that doesn't work when you do the math. I think by consolidating our state's public health agencies, we have set the conditions for a more efficient delivery of health care to South Carolinians across the spectrum. I think we've done a great job in terms of addressing some of the most pressing crime issues. There's more work to be done. Certainly magistrate reform is a 26 issue. I look forward to that. But from revenge porn to AI, pornography, fentanyl, as it continues to be a scourge in the state, as well as hands-free driving. I think we've done a lot there, and that's to say not a lot yet about the state budget, where we have prioritized making sure that our workforce is developing, that our kids are getting educated, that our state is able to deliver what people expect from the government as best we can, right? We haven't solved everything yet, and I don't mean to imply that we have, but a lot of positive work has been done.
So let's talk about that tax. There's a reason why you can't just turn around and cut tax to zero. Yep. You've got to be able to balance. You have a state requirement within the Constitution that we have a balanced budget.
That's right.
That has a lot of great factors to it because you can't spend what the state doesn't have.
That's right.
But there are reasons why. Some people are like, why can't we just go ahead and jump to zero right now? What are the factors that are playing into that right now?
So, and this is always a little weird because I don't typically think in terms of billions. It's not a big, millions even don't come up a lot in my life.
I can maybe get to tens this week.
Right. If you think about this, 1 million seconds is about 10 days, about 11 days. 1 billion seconds is 33 years. So the difference between a million and a billion, we can have most of my lifetime, though less of my lifetime at this point, but about 33 years. And I bring that up to say that our total state budget, all monies combined, is about $42 billion. Of that money, $14 billion is essentially discretionary money that the General Assembly can decide where it goes. So out of the 42, 14 is what we're going to control in the state budget. Of that, about 2/3 is going to education and healthcare. So as you've whittled that away, you go, okay, well, how much do you get to decide to spend on law enforcement pay, on education programs, on social services, on regulatory tasks? Well, it's a much smaller number. You compare that to the state income tax revenues, which are about all in $8 billion, and the math just doesn't work. There is, and I, as much as anyone who has ever walked the face of the earth, abhor waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm looking for it at all times. I'm proud to have served on our oversight committee where we're looking for that stuff well before it became the cool thing to do in D.C. We are looking for opportunities to cut that out. But no matter how much you think is there, it doesn't equal $8 billion in the state of South Carolina. And because we have had constitutionally a balanced budget requirement, we have gone through a lot of hard work, and it's not perfect, but we've gone through a lot of hard work to make sure that we're only funding programs, agencies, and institutions that need that money. And so if you just cut off $8 billion because you want to get rid of the income tax right now, my question to you is, where? Where? And even the most ardent proponents of cutting it now, our intellectually bankrupt friends over in the Freedom Caucus, when put to that challenge in the budget process, could only identify about $100 million. Now, that's not nothing. $100 million, and you don't have to worry about hearing from me again. But that, in the most aggressive formulation, was all that they could come up with. What do you do with the other $790 million? I didn't even do that math right. $7.9 billion. Where does that come from?
Right.
Sorry.
And that's a difficult thing that we have to balance out, both from an economic development standpoint. How do you bring companies in? Because income tax is paid by people who work here. Sales tax is paid by people who are in our state. How do we get more people into the state to be able to do that? But how do you offset? What's the plan to start offsetting as we start to tick ourselves down to a more reasonable income tax rate?
Well, it is a real challenge because we don't have the benefit in South Carolina of extraction industry. By that I mean oil and gas, right? If you're in Texas, you can cut your income tax to zero because you can tax the oil and natural gas that you're taking out of the earth and make up for that. As much as I love Myrtle Beach, Hilton Head, and Charleston, none of those hold a candle in the wind to Walt Disney World. You know, what Florida can do because they can tax different things makes our challenge all the more real. But all hope is not lost. We've seen in Tennessee that there's a path to get there. And when you do that responsibly, thoughtfully, you can get to success. But you've got to do it in a way that, again, I emphasize, is responsible and applies common sense. Because, look, I get as frustrated as anybody with state government. It drives me up the wall dealing with agencies sometimes. But those folks are there performing essential tasks that our citizens have come to depend on. And I'm not one who favors a reckless hacksaw approach to it.
So you brought up the Freedom Caucus just a moment ago. A group of anywhere from a dozen to 16 members. When you combine them with the Democrats, they still don't hold a candle to the entire rest of the Republicans, the Republican caucus in the House. It is not unusual. We have seen time after time, different groups. There was We the People, and then it was the Constitution Group, and then it was the Tea Party, and then it was, there's just different iterations of people who are saying, wait a minute, we've got to do something different. But this group of folks is taking some very different approaches, and is it slowing down what's going on? And how are you, as the members, having to deal with what is in essence a third party in the chamber?
Well, first, I think I should point out that this is not a uniquely right of center phenomena. We've seen it on the left, whether it was Occupy Wall Street or the Democratic Socialist Party of America, or really the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. They perhaps have just had a little more success in driving their national agenda way off to the left. Look, what these guys and gals represent are a frustration that is out there, and it is real. And to that, I have great sympathy. As somebody who is a conservative, I advocate for many of the same goals that they say that they do. The frustration, and it is just a frustration. At the end of the day, as you point out, they're unable to control anything or affect anything in the body. They don't have the votes for it. They certainly don't have the eloquence to convince anybody else to do it. And so it comes down to being an emotional frustration when in the middle of what is often hard work, we're sidelined or distracted by inane speeches that are unthoughtful, that don't help meaningfully improve the pending legislation. And so that's why it's an annoyance more than anything else. The struggle, I think, on a bigger scale, is that other people are looking into this, and their window to spend time looking at state government is small because they've got real life to do. And so, their bandwidth to look at the state House of Representatives is pretty small, if it even exists. And these guys are distracting and misrepresenting what their government is really doing. And so we have a Republican caucus in the House that I'm very proud of. We've done meaningful things to implement conservative policy in the state. And these guys are polluting the brand of conservative with their irresponsible language. And that's what drives my consternation and frustration.
Well, and you don't hold back on that when you're in the chamber. There have been plenty of times when in previous episodes of Connect to the Capitol, we'll play a clip of a conversation that you're having with a member of the Freedom Caucus, and you don't mince words with them.
No, I don't. Look, I think that it has to be called out for what it is. Because if you let plays go unchecked, the problem just metastasizes. And look, I don't think that I'm going to be able to break through and reach a broader audience, but in the hope that I can, to point out to folks that, hey, these guys who are telling you that they are the true paragon of what is right and conservative are also saying things like we should allow Russian gold coins, and I exaggerate not, strike me down if I do, Lord, Russian gold coins should be used to pay taxes in South Carolina. That is patently absurd, and I think that these folks should be laughed out of public life.
But you spent time actually having to discuss this on the House floor.
That's right. That's right. Because a member of the body has a right to put forward proposals, a right that I staunchly defend, a right that applied to things that I don't agree with, I believe should exist nonetheless, because that's what democratic governance is all about. Unfortunately, entitles a little bit less comfort as I sit in an air-conditioned room in a leather chair with a group of pages who will go get me coffee if I need it or water. It's emotionally annoying, but that's it.
So when you look at what you see coming up for 2026, there are a lot of things that were left undone. There are a lot of things that are still ahead. So let's talk about the things that you see that are going to be coming up on the runway of 2026's legislative session.
I think we will continue to focus on setting economic conditions for the state of South Carolina to continue to be a magnet for growth. We were just recently named the #1 destination for one-way U-Haul traffic. People want to be a part of South Carolina, and we want to make sure we continue to enable that so all of our friends and neighbors and fellow citizens can rise as the rising tide does. We want to make sure that we address the criminal problems that are plaguing the state. I think juvenile crime has gotten out of control. I think there are issues around reincarceration, catch and release that we need to take up. I think we will, again, continue to push the envelope on income tax, hopefully convince our friends in the Senate that our proposal is worthy of more discussion and debate. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that we will continue to make investments in our infrastructure. Anybody who's ever driven on a road in South Carolina knows we got to do more.
You know it when you cross the state line, and sometimes you recognize it from county to county.
It is painful. I feel it too. The unfortunate reality is that, look, everything in my life other than television sets has gotten more expensive. I mean, I feel like every time I'm in Walmart, I see a TV that's gotten bigger and cheaper, but everything else is more expensive. That includes roads, and it's going to require more funds to get that done, particularly where time is not inconsequential, right? When we do things, we've got to do it with focus and determination, because if you let it linger and languish, those rising costs then make it prohibitive to do the thing you set out to do initially. And that's why we lean and are leaning more on the Department of Transportation to improve their internal processes. You know, why is it taking so long to get an encroachment permit? What are we doing over there, guys? And so I've been heartened by Speaker Smith Morrill Smith, who has put an emphasis on that, and I'm optimistic that we'll make more progress there.
So you talked about two major things, growth and crime. Let's talk about growth real quick. Mm-hmm. We have had, since 1973, the population of South Carolina has doubled. We're seeing exponential growth. You talked about the U-Haul, one-way traffic for U-Haul. So we see growth happening. There's certain areas of the state that are growing faster than others. When we look at that, we've got local communities that are saying, wait a minute, we're going to slow down our growth. We're trying to figure out how to work on our infrastructure issues on that front. Mm-hmm. I would like you to share a little bit about that, the home rule aspect of that, but also we had an Attorney General's opinion that came out just this week that talked about hate crimes and how hate crimes can't, in his opinion, cannot necessarily be crimes, but could be fines. And as we were talking about it before this episode, you were kind of explaining how we got to this point.
Well, let me get to that, but first let me just emphasize a point you made about the growth in South Carolina. So that growth rate is true, and it is true that last year, 22 of 46 counties in South Carolina got smaller. Not grew less fast, got smaller. So there is a real densification of or urbanization of the population in South Carolina, and that has incredible pressures on not only our ground infrastructure, our port infrastructure to some extent. I wish I had more impact on our port infrastructure, but also housing. I mean, housing costs are through the roof from where we were just a few years ago, and all of those things are occurring in an environment where, again, the state government is doing its best to address it at its level, but local government has a critical role to play in managing that and developing it responsibly through zoning and other local land use regulation. And that's kind of dovetails into your question about home rule, which is to say that local governments have to make local decisions that apply locally, but without creating a patchwork that makes it hard for people in South Carolina to know what's legal and not. Right? You know intrinsically, if you want to open a business in South Carolina, you need to know what the zoning is for that location. Right? That's normal. But what you don't need to do is wonder whether or not some conduct that you undertake is somehow punished differently based on where you stand at that moment. And that argument is what the Attorney General brings forward in his opinion letter that was, again, answered at the request of a city attorney out of the city of Greenwood, who asked, can local governments constitutionally and legally enact local ordinances to deal with hate crimes? His analysis through the Solicitor General was that our government doesn't allow that, our state government doesn't allow that to happen because of the nature of how the state and local subdivisions were created. And so his answer is, no, the Constitution and the laws of the state don't support it. It's just an opinion letter. Others don't have to agree. And at the end of the day, someone in a black robe will probably have to decide that question. And until then, I think we'll take the position, I will certainly continue to take the position that the General Assembly is positioned to address that issue.
When we get to the second half of session, what a lot of folks you may or may not understand is in the second half of session, we actually start prepping for the elections. We've got primaries that are going to be coming up in June. From the middle of March to the end of March is this filing period where people can make a decision, are they going to run against somebody or run for office again? You've got certain members of the legislature who have decided, I'm ready to retire. Majority Leader Davey Hyde being one of those. How much does it impact what you do in the first portion of this second half of the legislative session? Are people fearful sitting there going, I don't want to take on too many controversial issues, and therefore it kind of waits on the back end of that? Or do you just say, just drive the bulldozer through and we're going to do everything we possibly can?
Probably somewhere in between is probably the consensus answer. There I would be quick to say that, you know, you got 124 different characters in the House who all probably would answer it slightly differently. Look, one of the aspects of our system of government, and some people say it as if it's a bug in the system, I think it's an attribute of the system, that we are sensitive to what our constituents want to have happen. Right? Like, that's the whole idea of representative governance, is that your member, your representative, your senator is going to do his or her best to enact your wishes. And so people are sensitive to that. The question, though, I think, is to what level is that sensitivity? I think it's most attuned coming up on election time. But in the House, we're up every 2 years. So it's not like our friends on the other end of the building in the Senate who perhaps are less sensitive for longer because their election terms are every 4 years at the state level. And so, again, I guess would say it is a relevant factor. I don't think it's a huge factor, and it's a relatively short period of time because I think, and just speaking for those of us in the House Republican caucus, you know, we have a clear agenda that we're trying to accomplish to enact conservative goals and do so responsibly with common sense. And I'm optimistic that we're going to do that regardless of a short-term filing pressure.
Last item of the day.
All right.
Got a new one. New baby at home.
Got a new baby.
Normally you'll pull out the phone really quick and start showing photos.
I've got it right
You got it right there?
I got it right here. There's my.
There he is, right there. If you can spot that one or not.
You better not watch this. No TV. No TV.
What is it like as a dad to sit here and know that the decisions that you're going to be making, the things that you're doing, does that affect what you do in the State House?
It certainly heightened my attention to it. I would say with all due humility that I think about what the business of the state is and the business of the General Assembly is in pretty big terms, right? And we should think about that because, as I often remind folks, we're not here to make suggestions, we're here to make laws. And we ought to undertake that with a seriousness of purpose. Having Mikey humanizes it a little more. I'm noticing that I perhaps haven't always been as sensitive as I could be. Perhaps it's 3 experiences at war in the Marine Corps that made me a little bit grumpy at times. But seeing his face and knowing that his ability to get a great education, his ability to get the training that he needs for his own future career, his ability to get health care in the state, his ability to raise and grow his own family one day depends on us getting it right now.
Big decisions you have to make. Representative Micah Caskey from the great town of Springdale.
Glad to be here.
Right here. Thanks so much for being part of this time today. And thanks for watching this Connect to the Capitol Extra, where we always try to make sure that you stay connected to the Capitol. We'll catch you next time.